All right, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest and greatest episode of the Student Alliance Speaker Series from Tigger House Foundation. Before we get into today's topic and introduce our guest, I just want to mention to everyone to please don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms, just to stay up to date with everyone, and also so you can get others to join the Tigger House Foundation. And you'll be able to see more content from us that we post pretty frequently. So I think we should kick it off with just short introductions. I know pretty much everyone now. I'm Carly Dietrich. I'm Tigger House Foundation's Addiction Navigator. So happy to see everyone. Carla, you want to kick it off and then pass it on?
Sure. So I am Carla Scarabino. I am the Director of Development for Tigger House. Happy to be here. I know everyone student-wise had the day off, so thank you so much for joining us on your day off, but I think it's going to be a great topic and you're going to enjoy it. I will pass it along to Amy.
Hey everybody, I'm Amy Thomas. I'm Tigger House's Assistant Director of Development. I want to thank you guys also for joining in tonight. I know it was a holiday for many of you, but I'm very excited to hear what Detective Simonelli has to say tonight. So let's go to Michaela.
Hi guys, happy Monday. I'm Michaela Grande and I am an ambassador with Tigger House. Professionally, I work with kids with autism, but it's good to be here.
Awesome. Michaela, you just want to pass it on? Just pick someone?
Oh, sure. Alex.
Hi, my name is Alex Letta, and I'm a junior at Raritan High School. This is my first year doing SAD and Rocket Lifeline, and I don't know. I'm just here to learn new stuff.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Alex. We're happy to have you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. I'll pass it to Zach Riley.
Cool.
I'm a freshman at Raritan High School, and this is my first time as well. So I'm just here to learn, I guess.
Awesome. We're happy to have you, Zach. Thanks for joining. Hi, Mary.
Hi, I'm a sophomore at Trinity Hall, and I'm a part of the Student Alliance.
Excellent. It's good to see you. Hey, Tess.
Hi, I'm a junior at Mater Dei and I'm part of the Student Alliance.
Awesome. Hi, Francis. How are you?
Hi, I'm Frankie and I'm a sophomore at Trinity Hall.
Awesome. Hey, Dan.
Hey, I'm Dan Mooney. I'm the Student Alliance co-president and I'm a junior at CBA.
Awesome. Hey, Rich, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good.
Good. My name is Rich Gubatosi, and I'm one of the ambassadors here.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich. And Jacqueline. Sorry, you're on mute.
Hey, I'm Jackie. Pretty close to the family that started Tigger House. I'm not in high school. I'm actually in the police academy. So this is definitely a talk that I'm interested in as I enter the world of law enforcement.
Cool. We're so happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Awesome. All right. I think we've got everyone, and I apologize. My English lab couldn't be snoring any louder, but hopefully you don't hear him. I'll put him on mute. So let's see. We are very excited to introduce our guest speaker. Tonight we have Detective Charles Simonelli, Long Branch Police Department. He investigates juvenile and major crimes and is a gang intel officer. He's a certified instructor for GREAT, DARE, and LEAD programs, inclusive of cyberbullying, internet safety, gang awareness, and opioid abuse. So just want to give Detective Simonelli a very warm welcome. We appreciate your time. We know you're busy. You just mentioned that, DOA, someone was dead on arrival on the street, and that's a case that you're working. And, you're just, I'm all teared up. You're just amazing and really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
So I'll kick it off to you.
All right. I want to first thank the Tigger House and Carla and Carly and Amy for inviting me to do this. This is my first Zoom meeting, guys, so kind of bear with me.
You're
I want
lucky.
to call my son in here to keep showing me how to use it. I kind of taught myself how to do this. I usually do it as a PowerPoint presentation to the schools. So I'm going to try it here. So I took a 2 to 3 day school assembly that we do for seniors in Long Branch, and I kind of condensed it down, way down. It's going to seem like a lot of information, but it's kind of the basic. Like I said, I usually do my homework with the kids I talk to. So I don't know what you guys know and what don't you know about things. So we're going to discuss that. Like Carly said, I am a police officer with a detective for the Long Branch Police Department. I am currently employed in 24. I've been on 24 years right now. Starting my career, I've been in the detective bureau for over 18 years as a detective. So I kind of got the record running right now. I'm the longest detective. So I'm hoping I can finish my last year and 8 months out there and retire that way. But it's a very rewarding job. But two, it's a very stressful job at times when we talk about stuff like this, because I'll show you through the slides when we go on that this is something that is going to touch all of us. This is a program that was founded by Manchester Police Department a few years back. It was called Not Even Once. And today we're going to talk about the biggest problem going right now is the opioid epidemic. And when most people think about opioid epidemics, we usually think about the heroin aspect of it. But right now, maybe in the 70s, you really didn't hear about people taking pills and getting started into heroin. Right now, as a prescription drugs is becoming the current trend. Like I said, I'm Detective Simonelli. I'm no different than anybody else. I have a family, kids that I adore, and I go to work for every day. But can anyone tell me what are opioids? Does anyone know? All right. Do you guys know who do they affect? Oh, that's why I usually give a.
They're quiet tonight. Sorry,
give a
Charlie.
quiz test, so you guys already have the answer. So when we're talking about things like this, we're talking about opium, heroin, Oxycontin, codeine, morphine, and hydrocodone. All right. Let me make sure I didn't go too fast. How about, can someone describe what an addict looks like? If I was to ask you what a heroin addict or a pill addict look like today, would you be able to describe them to me?
Looks like anybody.
Exactly, anyone. But unfortunately, they get that that stigma that when people describe them, that they have to think they look a certain way. So, like I said, I have 2 videos. The first video I'm going to show you, it shows you to believe it could be anybody. This is a beautiful young lady. I believe she was 20 years old. But this is her family telling her story about her heroin addiction. So if you guys just bear with me, and it's a pretty good story.
She had a smile that would light up a room. She had a passion for basketball. Then she picked up golf, and she was a natural with that. She really enjoyed the game.
The one thing that caught us truly off guard going towards the end is we didn't realize how badly she felt about herself. Look at the pictures. Why would we think she had a self-esteem problem? But the fact of the matter is that was one of the major engines that drove her to areas where she really didn't need to go, didn't have to go.
My spoons started to disappear. And I'm not talking, 1 or 2. It'd be like, okay, I have like 3 spoons left.
And I remember I had $150 some in my wallet. I had, when I went to pay that, I had $75. And of course she started crying. And yes, I came down. Yes, I took your credit card. Yes, I used it.
And I remember going to court the next day and you know, beautiful Marin, and then bringing her in, shackles on her ankles in these prison uniform. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how did we get here? I was just numb.
She needed the money to pay some people back, and she needed the money to trade the gas for the heroin.
If you would have asked us, what do you know about heroin? I would have said a street drug, a junkie's drug. You know, not something that you would hear about on TV. It's not something that you would find in a community like Pickerington or any suburb. I mean, every day was that we have to keep her alive. We have to save her. If she said she was going to a meeting, I would follow ahead of time and sit in the parking lot and see her walk in, because I could breathe again, because she showed up. We got one more day. She's sober one more day. She never even had a car, but she still found a way to get it because they would just bring it to the house when we were sleeping.
I remember walking into the apartment, and I've never heard such a horrendous scream in all my life. When I went up and walked through that bathroom door and saw him there holding my daughter, I knew immediately she'd passed away.
I know she really wanted to make it. And I know she doesn't want to see any other family go through what we have gone through. And I know she wants me to talk about it. And I found her journal that I bought for her. In her journal, she wrote a goodbye letter to heroin. Dear heroin, before I met you, I was full of life, at least from what I thought. But then problems started coming my way that gave me the excuse to meet you. It was like love at first sight. Not only did you do things for me, but boy, did I do things for you. I lied to my family, friends, and even more importantly, I lied to myself. I would steal and cheat for you. I would risk my freedom and my life for you. But our relationship went to hell when the first and last time you really almost took me away forever. You had me for 7 minutes. I won this battle, and I will never have to suffer again. Sincerely, your worst enemy, Marin Briggs. She still went back to it. That it was still because of the grip it had on her.
Do I miss her every day? Oh, sure.
We can't bring her back, and we can't go back. But if we can help other people by telling our story, then that's what we have to do.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
That's why I asked in the beginning, can someone tell me what an addict looks like? And like I said years ago, and I'm going to be kind of unpolitically correct, they wouldn't use the word addict. They would say junkie, fiend, scale. But that's changed because the way people are being addicted to this drug. It's not just with heroin, as you'll see when we go on. It usually starts now somewhere else, and it leads to that. But in the 70s and 80s, it was pretty much straight heroin. You had the choice to take it, and that's how you started getting addicted. So it's an eco-opportunist. It doesn't care how rich you are or how poor you are, what color your skin is. It devours everybody. In my time as a detective, I have seen the rich people to the poorest of poor being devoured by this right now. So it is pretty crazy. So we talk about how do we get here, right? How it affects you in ways. I can promise you this, at some point in time, this will hit every one of us individually. It's crazy because if it doesn't affect your family, immediate family, you will know somebody that has had a problem or who OD'd from it, right? It doesn't have to be your family. It could be a kid that you went to school with. It could be a girlfriend, but it will impact each and every one of us. I used to think I was immune to it growing up. As you see up in the top right hand, this is my oldest sister. This is before I was a cop and I was like a teenager, and I really didn't know that. You know, I thought about heroin was like a dirty drug. Only poor people did that. You know, so it was crazy. So her and her boyfriend fought the demons, like that girl said. She wrote a love letter to it, and it gets a grasp to you and holds on to you, and people just keep coming back. But I was lucky. My sister and her boyfriend, over 30 years now, have been clean, and my sister is doing great. And when I became a cop, she had a little bit of issues, and I told her, if you ever want to see my kids, you have to do the right thing. And she's done it ever since, and I'm proud of her for it. But now I have the bad side. I have my cousin's son who had a little girl who was fighting for years with the demons. He started off taking pills and worked his way into heroin. He was in recovery and freehold, I believe, at the time. And he left one night and ended up meeting up with friends and ended up overdosing that night. So like I said, it'll affect us somehow in some way, but it does affect us. Trying to figure out how to work this. All right. So when I ask, I'll say when and why was heroin invented? It was invented for, like most drugs, it was invented for a purpose. Heroin was synthesized from morphine in 1874 by Charles Simonelli, but he really didn't do much with it. In 1898, Philip Hoffman independently synthesized heroin for Bayer. When you say Bayer, it's a common name because it's Bayer aspirin. So it was produced for a reason. Back then, it was used for, you know, as using cough medicines, pain relief for people having babies, and they put you in a stupor and a consciousness when they were performing surgery on you. It was also used for much of the same reason morphine was created from opium, to curb addiction. So they figured when they created this, it would help fight the addiction to morphine, but it really didn't work that way. Since morphine had such an addictive properties, Bayer and others hoped that heroin would be a different aspect to it, but it never was. However, it became widely abused and was finally banned under the Heroin Act in 1924. Heroin is deemed illegal, and it began to be smuggled from China. I just got to figure out how to move these things. In China, to the United States via the black market in Chinatown, and it was distributed outward. In 1948, when gangsters from Corsica connected with the mafia in the United States, they began to distribute it and overtake the market. Turkish opium became refined, was refined in France and sold to New York. This connection allowed the rise of American users between 1965 and 1970. There was an estimate of 750,000 users back then. I personally believe between 1965 and 1970, a big part of that was because of the Vietnam War, and a lot of the guys that were coming home that were being treated with morphine over there for injuries. So when they came home, they kind of, went to that drug. So that's my personal belief when it comes to it. So when you talk about what is a drug is any substance other than food when inhaled, injected, or smoked, or consumed that alters your effect of your body and your mind. Well, sometimes I wonder, because I love pizza and I like to eat that stuff all the time. So I kind of like think food could be addicting, but they say no. It can be absorbed via a patch of the skin or dissolved under your tongue. It causes a physiological change in your body. Most people don't realize that alcohol, caffeine, and aspirin and nicotine are all drugs. That's why we're having a big problem with vaping today, because of the nicotine in it. So when we say what is heroin, right? For people that don't know what heroin is, I mean, if you're a kid, you probably don't know unless you know someone that's doing it, or if you kind of watch American Gangster or other TV shows that show stuff like that. It's really a narcotic derived from opium. It comes from the poppy plants. It was essentially a painkiller like morphine. It's synthetic. It is extremely addicted. A person can become addicted after only one use. People say, what do you mean one use? That's not going to happen. But a lot of the people that I interact with on the street and that I come in contact with at work, I always like to hear their story, how they got started or what it was. And usually with girls, it comes to if their boyfriend is taking it and they start, and the first time they inject it, they say they're hooked and they just can't fight it off. It's so dirty and evil. They say it's like the demons and it just keeps attacking them and they keep going for it. So I threw a couple pictures up here for you guys. When you talk about heroin, it's usually a white powder substance or a black tar. When it's sold, usually on the street, they sell it in either single decks. That's one bag. It's a wax-like bag. It has about 2.2 milligrams of heroin in it. It should weigh about 100 milligrams, but that's not the case. Here we go with individual bundles. Bundles are about 10 bags. So a bag can cost you anywhere from $5 to $10. And then a bundle can cost you anywhere from 50 to 100. And then the bigger ones are 3 bricks, and each brick usually has about 5 bundles in it. But this is just like the basic part to it when it comes to that. But prices can vary because, especially with street narcotics, if it's supply and demand, if it's out there and they can't get it, the prices go up. When the streets are flooded with it, the prices come down. If you're a good customer, your dealer might give it to you cheaper. So everyone pays a little bit of different prices. So this is another video when you talk about how does it affect you, and this is what it does.
Before we can explore your brain on opiates, we need to understand a few things. An opiate is a chemical derived from opium and is the key ingredient in heroin. Those narcotics in your medicine cabinet, codeine, oxycodone, hydrocodone, they're opiate-like, but they are man-made and more commonly referred to as opioids. So how do these chemicals affect the brain? One big way is by exerting powerful pain relief to the rest of the body. Chemicals flood the system and latch onto millions of opiate receptors peppered throughout the body. Think of opiates and their receptors like puzzle pieces. When they bind together, pain signals are dulled, or they go away altogether. If the brain already has opiate receptors, doesn't that mean it can naturally provide pain relief? That's right. Feel-good chemicals like endorphins are natural opiates that dull pain and also give you a rush. The problem with man-made opiates that mimic endorphins, take too many and they can overwhelm the system, give you too much of a rush. That can lead to dependence or abuse. Addiction becomes an even bigger problem because opiates also slow down breathing and heart rate. Mix them with other things that slow down your body, and everything could grind to a halt. In fact, every 19 minutes, someone dies of an accidental prescription drug overdose. Most of the time, it involves an opiate. It's now more common than dying in a car crash. If If you want to avoid that fate, don't take more than you're prescribed. Don't use other people's prescriptions. Never mix opiates with alcohol. And maybe try other ways of alleviating your pain, like over-the-counter pain relievers and good old-fashioned exercise.
So when Marion's mom was speaking, she talked about spoons, right? So a spoon is pretty much one of the common things that people cook the heroin in to liquefy it so they can put it in a needle. So what I tell parents, when you start noticing stuff like that missing, you might start asking yourself what's going on and start investigating with your kids. But it's very simple and easy to do. All you need is a diabetic needle, an insulin needle, I'm sorry, a spoon, some water, and some fire. And something to wrap around your arm. So now that was heroin we were talking about. And that was like the bad drug, the dirty drug. But why are people going to heroin? And this is what we're going to talk about now, is to move away from that to kind of wrap it up and go back to it. What is Oxycontin, right? So these are prescribed by a doctor. It's an opioid medication used for treatment of severe pain or ongoing pain, right? Like cancer. It is used to manage pain severe enough to require daily, around-the-clock, long-term treatment with opioids. So when you have cancer, you're constantly taking medication to fight the pain and the symptoms of it to make you comfortable enough to keep going. So another one that is a very big thing, and it's probably one of the biggest, is going to be hydrocodone. It's another prescribed drug. It is one of the most abused painkiller out there. Hydrocodone is a class of medication called opiates that we all know it's a narcotic. Once again, it's another one that relieves pain by changing the way your brain thinks. Like the video said, the receptors in your brain and the nervous system to respond to pain. For example, it relieves a cough, right? If you're having a coughing episode, it would relieve you, it would tell you a signal to your brain that you don't need to cough anymore. So it kind of works. When most of these pain pills, in reality, when you take them, they don't really alleviate pain. It makes your mind go away from thinking about the pain. So when did this pill epidemic start, right? Unfortunately, they started tracking it in the 1990s. Those two pills that we talked about, oxycodone and hydrocodone, were probably was over prescribed by doctors and patients who needed for pain relief. That's kind of why a lot of the doctors were getting in trouble, because they were just giving this out like candy to people. You go to the ER, or you go to the dentist, you get a tooth pulled, they're giving you Percocets, they're giving you pain pills. Years ago, they didn't do that. You got a bag of ice and a few Motrin. We didn't even have Motrin. Aspirins back then, and you were sent home. So if you look at the graph from 1991, this only goes up to 2013. It dips a little bit in 2013, and that's because we really started going after doctors and watching how they prescribed your pills. Because people would start what's called doctor shopping. They would go from doctor to doctor to get it. Right now, when it talks about the prescription drugs, it's a non-medical use and abuse of prescription drugs. It's a growing health problem in the United States right now. Annually, more people die from prescribed opioid pain relievers than illegal drugs combined. When they say legal access, it's easy to get because you go to its culture. You go to a doctor, you trust your doctor. I mean, I've had my left knee, my right knee, and both of my shoulders operated on. When you go into the doctor's office, here you go, it's 30 Percocets, 30 Oxycontin, here's 30 Vicodin. So doctors at one point were just writing it away. I want to say Johnson & Johnson was sued over the opioid epidemic. I believe was one of those pharmaceutical companies, because they were just making a drug that was so addicting to people. So of course, people started overdosing on prescription drugs. It became to be one of the leading causes of deaths in the United States. 72% of the deaths were attributed to pharmaceutical-related opioids. This indicates tragic consequences of prescription drugs. So what it's telling you, it's being misused and abused. Prescription drugs abuse may soon be probably one of the largest substance abuse problem in the United States. How does someone get to become an addict to heroin? And like I told you guys in the beginning, most people nowadays just don't start off going to heroin. They usually start off by an injury, especially young kids. They can get hurt in sports or something like that. They go to a doctor prescribes them an opioid, and they start taking it. And the urge of taking it kind of starts to fight it. And what starts to happen is you go to a doctor. Now, when we talk about doctors, people are doctor shopping. So you go to your regular doctor and you have insurance. They will only prescribe you 30 pills in a month cycle, and you wouldn't be able to get a refill into a certain amount of time, even if you were out. But people found a way around that. They started doctor shopping, going to doctors and say, well, if I don't use my insurance and I pay, I can get X amount of pills that way. So that was probably one of the biggest causes when the spike came up. Then what happened was the DEA and everyone started really cutting down on doctors and watching how scripts were being written. So years ago, you would be able to go to one doctor and go to Rite Aid. And then you go to another doctor and go to Walgreens. They were coming from New York. So these people were getting hundreds and hundreds of pills and taking them. So when it comes to the pill form, what happens is when you talk about Vicodin and all these other ones, they kind of get expensive. They can usually go anywhere from $1 a milligram, and they can cost you anywhere from, on the low, $30 to a high between 60 and 100, depending on how many milligrams or in a pill. So if you're getting an 80 milligram pill of Vicodin, or that, it would actually cost you that much money. So they had to transition from that because they couldn't sustain the cost of drugs. And then they had to stop the addictive part. So they would go through withdrawals when they weren't taking the pills. So it kind of turned them into, well, I can buy a $5 bag of heroin, or I can get a bundle for $60 and get 10 bags, or I can spend $80 to get one pill. So it was that vicious cycle that just kept going. And the symptoms are so bad with the withdrawals that they kept going through it. But unfortunately, and any addict will tell you, even after the withdrawal symptoms have disappeared, you still get that craving for it. You still have to fight that addiction for your whole life. Just like I talked about Oxycodone before, the cycle begins. Patients need to get pills. They need to support a habit somehow. Once the patient has developed a tolerance, when you take medications, your body does what a baseline. So when you don't take medication for any kind of injury or for any kind of condition, you start off on the bottom and you start to rise up. Then when your body starts building a tolerance to it, it starts to base out as a baseline. So how do you get higher from that baseline? You're going to have to start taking more pills or shooting more heroin. So it's like a double-edged sword when it comes to medication, because most of the time we do reach that baseline sooner or later. So like I said, the supply and demand from the doctors, they start doctor shopping. Pills, like I said, were 30. Usually once all your money is drained and you can't sustain the buying pills anymore, you start buying heroin. And a lot of the people that I come in contact with that went from went from pills to heroin would tell you, I just could not afford to buy the pills anymore. I get more bang for my buck, sort of say, for them buying the heroin. So it's really a vicious cycle. And most of the people start off by snorting it. It's a powder form. It looks like cocaine. They cut it up and put it up their nose. But after a while, that high is not enough for them. And they hear that euphoric feeling that you get when you take that first injection, that rush, that they're always chasing it. So that's the biggest thing when it comes to that. You go from a prescribed prescription from a doctor that you get addicted to, and then the doctor cuts you off. You have to find a way to get that medicine because you're going through withdrawals and other symptoms, and then you kind of revert to heroin. And it's very easy to get, believe it or not. So we talk about rock bottom. So I put this girl up here because this is a great example about what I do. So this young lady was 22 years old. I don't know her. I stole her off the internet, just so you guys know. Okay. But when we start locking people up from your first time you were arrested or from your driver's license, and with a 1 year span, you look like the girl to the right, scabs on her face. She looks like death. But unfortunately, the only way that addict sees himself as the first person, they don't see what it's doing to their body and how they look. Because like I would show people pictures. I'm like, look at you. This is what you used to look like. And they'd be like, no, I still look that way. I'm like, you're crazy. You got scabs all over your face. You're itching to death. It is very bad to it. And then when it comes to when they're so bad, when we talk about rock bottom, is people do just about anything. Well, I wouldn't say just about. I would say do anything to get high. And that's the problem. I mean, I've worked a couple good cases where sexual favors were brought out there for a girl to get drugs. And the dealer's still going to say, you know, you're going to give me you're going to perform a sexual favor on me today, but you're still going to pay me in a week from now for what you owe me. So it's kind of crazy. And people are doing anything just to get high. Rob, cheat, scam, steal. So it becomes a very vicious cycle. And here's another part to it is peer pressure. All right. We're kids. Well, I'm not a kid anymore. You guys are kids. So when we talk about peer pressure, it can be positive, it can be negative. Right. So you all have to get a strategy to overcome peer pressure. And I'm talking about the negative aspect. So when I usually talk to kids, I've learned this when I got married. The deacon asked me if I wanted to be the head of the neck of the body. And I was like, oh, yeah, I want to be the head. And he was like, yeah, good job, stupid. The neck moves the head, right? I was like, wow. So I always tell kids, you always want to be the leader, not a follower. Eventually, your friends will see the good in you and start to follow you. In today's society, bad is good and good is bad with kids for some reason. It's not great to be a good kid anymore. You kind of have to be a bad kid to kind of be accepted and fit in, or you're a goofball, a nerd, or, you're shunned by your peers. But some of the strategies I say, get involved in school activities, sports, pay attention to how your body feels and your gut instincts of situations. A plan ahead. Think about how you will respond to different situations. Have a plan if someone asks you something. Hey, listen, it's one of like DARE or great classes that I learned. It's like lesson 8. Hey, Johnny, do you want to smoke weed? And I'm like, no, I have to go to the store for my mom. So in my mind, I already had a plan that I knew what I was going to have an answer for if someone asked me to do something or I felt I was being pressured into. Always give an excuse. We kind of taught not to lie, but in a situation like this, that little white lie can probably save your life. Make it easy to say no if you already have a reason, right? So if you don't have a reason and someone asks you to do something, you kind of felt pressure because you're going to do it. Have friends with similar values of you. I always tell people you kind of have to be outside your box to grow, but you kind of want to surround yourself with people that have the same values that you do and in beliefs. If that's not the case, you might want to go seek out new friends. You don't always want to be with those negative people in your life because eventually you're going to be part of that negativity and it's going to be a downhill spiral for you. We had this with my son. He's 24 now. When he was a teenager, we used to have a secret code to communicate with him. So if he was with a group of friends or something happened and he felt that he knew it was wrong and he didn't want to go, he kind of used my wife as the go-between because he didn't want to tell dad the cop because dad might get mad. But we had a plan for it. And it worked well for us. And it can work for any kid. I always think kids should have, sometimes the truth hurts and parents don't want to hear it, but you need to have that open dialogue with your parents so they can understand where you're coming from. Like I said, I'm a grown man. We didn't have stuff like this. I would love to be a kid today for some parts of it, but the pressure that are on kids today, I don't think I could deal with the drugs and social media, bullying. You know, I went to school, you got bullied for 8 hours, the day was over and you went home. Today, you get bullied 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It just doesn't go away. Another way to get it is get support from trusted adults. You know, you guys are in school, Trinity School, Raritan. I'm telling you, there's always that cool teacher, that cool hall monitor. There's always an adult or someone that you know that you can confide in and talk to about what's going on. And I hate to say it, I've been dealing with a lot of schools, and a lot of the school counselors, the SACs, they're awesome people. They're young. They're not like the old teachers that have been there for 50 years. You know, they kind of get it and they understand the stuff that kids are going through today. So that's very important. So when we talk about consequences of becoming an addict, so I kind of changed it. I had a prison cell, a picture, and I had a tombstone, right? So when you think about, those are probably like the two most worst things that can happen to you, but I beg to differ, all right? Besides getting involved with the law and the physical, the psychological part to it, the physiological part and the health effects, your social life, right? You start becoming an outcast from good friends. So like, if your friends aren't doing this and you start getting addicted to things, you're going to change. You're going to think your friends change, but you're going to change. And you're going to see them, especially with girls, because girls are rough. They kind of get catty. They turn their back on you and that's it. They won't talk to you forever. Guys are a little different. We can argue today, not talk for 2 weeks, and then we're back together again and everything is fine and dandy. But your social life definitely takes a hit when it comes to this. Family life, like they said in the story, you know, I don't know how many times you can cheat, lie, and steal from your family. And a lot of the families I deal with know that their kids are stealing from them. And I mean stealing, robbing from them blind, running their credit cards up, hawking their jewelry, selling stuff in the house, giving it away for drugs. Some parents tell me, you know, they kind of wish their kid would just pass away, overdose. So they get, and it's a crazy feeling when you say that, but then you got to kind of think about them because they're up all night constantly worrying about where their kid is and how they're doing. So I kind of understand both sides of it because as a parent, you know, when we have little kids, it's little problems and little worries. As kids get older, we start to worry about it more. And I wouldn't want to be that parent to get a knock on the door telling someone that my kid OD'd. It's probably going to be like, it's devastating for a parent. And I've made a couple of those notifications and they're not good. Your work life, you know, most people say, oh, I can do both. I can get high and go to work. Yeah, maybe in the beginning when you first start out, but at the end, it's not going to exist anymore. One is going to overtake the other. And normally the habit usually overtakes, the addiction overtakes your work life. Relationships, I've watched marriages get ruined, friendships get ruined. And like I said before, death, right? Those are just something, the big consequences. So when we talk about Monmouth County overdoses, I took this off the Monmouth County website. So we're going to talk about a drug that I talked to Carly about. I mentioned before you guys came on. It was called Narcan. It's like the wonder drug for addicts because we shoot it up your nose and they come back to life, I would say over 90% of the time. But if you look, when we started tracking it in 2014, there was 97 Narcan deployments. To where we are today, it's 433 in 2020. And that's just the latest data available. I'm sure this is all going to rise. With overdose deaths from Narcan, even though there were Narcan in 2014, 12 people would overdose from it. In 2020, even though with the Narcan deployment, they still overdosed, was 143. And that number, like I said, that's just the current. Those things will change. And then, of course, we have the overdose deaths, right? You have two different ones. Overdose deaths with a mixture of narcotics, then you have an overdose death of heroin and opium. 2014, it was 104 to 100. Here we go in 2020, we're at 433 and climbing to 143. You know, yeah, 2018, we were higher, it was like 554. So we're coming down, but we're not coming down enough, you know, to 216 opioid and heroin deaths. So I always say you can always scale numbers back and forth, but I always see that there's a rise in it. It kind of plateaus for a little bit. People get it, they stop using, and then it goes back up. And due to COVID, I really think mentally and physically, it's going to affect more and more people. So you're going to see them start abusing alcohol and drugs to deal with the COVID aspects. This is the drug I was talking to you about before. I want to say they were selling it. You can buy it in like Rite Aid or CVS over the counter. All our patrol cars that our supervisors' cars are all equipped with this, and so with first aid departments. So usually when we come to a call and you're out cold for an overdose, the first thing you hear on the radios, deploy Narcan. Narcan is agitationist used to counteract the effects of narcotics, especially to counteract the depression and the respiration parts of it. But I've seen people out for a few minutes that they inject in this, and you wake up like nothing happened to you, and you're pissed off at the cop for ruining your high. And you know, sometimes like, dude, you know, you were just dead. We just brought you back to life, and they don't care. You ruined my high. I spent money, and I feel bad. You know, I just want to leave the hospital, and I want to go home and get high again. There's some people we Narcan maybe 3 times a week. So we don't know the effects of it at the end with Narcan. But when we talk about heroin, we start trying to figure out why heroin is so potent today. And right now, the reason why heroin is so potent is because this wonder drug called fentanyl, and I mean sarcastically. Fentanyl is a potent synthetic opioid pain medication with a rapid onset of short duration. Fentanyl establishes about 80 to 100% more potent than heroin. So I talked to one of my buddies before. I'm going to throw numbers out there. I want to say like a kilo of heroin is probably like $22,000, roughly. A kilo of fentanyl is probably going to cost you a couple $1,000. So it's cheap. So they put the fentanyl in the heroin to give you a better high, so they make you feel higher. But I'll show you in a little bit, it only takes a little bit of it to kill you. I mean, just a drop of it. Marijuana and heroin are accounted for 73% of drugs submitted to New Jersey State Police forensic labs to be analyzed during 2015. We're finding that marijuana, heroin, and cocaine are laced with fentanyl. I want to say I've read not about a year or so ago, some kid was vaping a THC pen, and there was fentanyl in it, and he passed away. So, you know, when you talk about narcotics like this, they're really dirty drugs. You never know what they're going to put in them. It can be rat poison, it can be caffeine, it can be over-the-counter pain medication that they chop up so they can put more into the pile and make more money for themselves. So it's very, very crazy. So if you look at 2015, our submissions for fentanyl were 660% higher. That's how fast it's going up. When we talk about fatal doses, here's like heroin. And usually with heroin, if you're lucky, you'll get 2.2 milligrams in a bag. It should weigh 1 gram, but it usually doesn't. But it only takes a little mixture of fentanyl into the heroin that will kill you. If you look at this penny compared to the fentanyl, it's like a crumb. So it's not much. And then you have carfentanil, it's probably one of the potent ones. It just takes a drop of it. Now, in the law, as a cop, years ago when I became a cop, you know, we lock someone up. If they had heroin, I'd take it out and they put rubber gloves on, you put on the deck and you sit there and you count out how many bags you had. and you put it in the report. Now we're so cautious and careful with it that we have to put on gloves, and some departments have ventilation systems that suck it out so you don't breathe it in. Because if you breathe it in, you can get very sick and die from it. So, like I said before in the last slide, we're finding marijuana laced with fentanyl right now in the submissions. And when you hear people dying, it's either because it's an underlying medical condition or there's other reasonings to it. So this act right here in 2013, it was Overdose Prevention Act. Excuse me, guys, I'm stumbling a little bit. This was a great act that was put into law because we're finding a lot of people that would overdose, and people would just leave the house and run out and leave them there to die. What this law does is, by the Good Samaritan rule, you can call the cops and say, hey, my buddy just injected himself with heroin and he's dying. I'm here right now. Can you come here? You have full immunity. You can have heroin on you and stuff there. They're not going to do anything to you. You possibly just saved a life. So this law was for that reason, because a lot of people, when they would start to die, would just leave the person because they couldn't revive them. So now by calling the cops and the first aid, we get there, we bring the magical drug in, the Narcan, and we can hopefully bring them back to life and save a life. So this was put into place in 2013. How bad can a habit get? Listen, like any other drug, your body builds up a tolerance and immune to it, right? And over time, it overcomes you. It becomes a very vicious cycle that gets progressively worse. Doesn't get better, it normally gets worse. Some people usually use, when they start using heroin, they're either snorting or banging 1 to 2 bags per day. Up to some people, depending on the potency and how their body tolerance is, can snort and shoot up to 50 bags a day. It's crazy, but it's like I said, it is overwhelming what people do right now. How do we treat it? Right, years ago we treated it, we locked you up and threw you in jail. Well, we found out that didn't work. Like the Tigger House and everything, like them, they kind of help us now. So a lot of law enforcement work hand in hand with drug treatment places. But the old-fashioned way to treat a drug addict or an addict, excuse me, I don't want to use the wrong drug addict, was by physicians. A doctor would prescribe you. Suboxone and methadone were the 2 most common drugs prescribed to heroin addicts. There used to be a clinic in Asbury Park, a methadone clinic, and you would see the line of people outside to go in there, and they would get their little cup and they would drink it, and it would help with their addiction and the withdrawal symptoms that you would get from it. And the withdrawal symptoms, when you don't take the drug, it gets real bad. You have inability to sleep, you get restless discomfort, anxiety, real bad muscle pain, sweats. So it can be real bad. So these drugs were helping people trying to reverse the effect and get them, wean them off of the narcotic or the heroin. Now we have great inpatient treatment facilities where a patient can live for an onset of time to deal with their addiction. But that's great when it comes to treatment facilities, because you can go to a 30-day treatment facility. And I always tell people, and this is the way I've been told, if I leave my house and I go to a treatment facility and I come back and I still associate with the same people and don't change my habits, probably 99% of the time I'll go back to doing it. But these programs have been great. They have life coaches and people you can call 24/7. They help you, walk you through it and talk you off the ledge. So things have really changed in my time as a cop from where we're at now, especially with the outpatient treatment programs. So everything is kind of like, we're working hand in hand with these facilities, and we're not putting people in jail for it. We're sending the treatment facilities, and some judge gives you court orders, will issue a court order and tell a person that they have to satisfy the needs of the court order and go into a program. So this is the way it's being done now. And hopefully we're going to see the drop in numbers. Like I said, I didn't want to take too much of your time. I hope I didn't, but I'm open for any questions. this is my email address at work. This is my phone number at work and my extension. I just got to give kudos to these people right here for my slide, so I don't get yelled at. But pretty much, that's where we're at. And I kind of, listen, the presentation is nice, but it's better when it's in person, because we're all sitting here. I have a hard time sitting 40 minutes. But I tried to give you guys a lot in one time. We could have probably done this or just talking. You guys seem like a great bunch of kids. And I probably would have been easier for me just to talk to you that way. But I kind of think by putting slides out there, you get a little bit of visual aspect of it and a little bit of me talking to you of it. So with that said, I can tell you this right now. We have our hands full with this epidemic. It's not something that's going to change overnight, but it starts with you guys. If you guys learn to say no and change the way the culture is only going to make it better. It's just like, when I talk about society to people, how does society change? You're the future of us, right? I'm halfway in the grave right now. You kind of think, I'm more closer to the graveside than I am being a kid. But kids like you are the ones that will make a difference in the future. So you set your goals and you guys work together and you guys will probably be able to achieve anything. And I take that with a quote from Walt Disney: if you can dream it, you can do it, or something like that. I'm very big on that. I use that at work a lot to people. So with that said, do you guys have any questions for me?
Come on, guys, let's open it up. Is anyone interested in being a detective, wants to get into law enforcement? How do you think detective got into what he does? Let's pick his brain a little bit.
Wow, you guys are good. I thought this was
Oh, they're
crazy.
quiet. They're quiet. But I wanted to really, that was really, really great. I really like the way you presented the information, especially, I've seen a lot of this before, but I like the way it's grouped. I think that video of that young girl was really, really moving.
Yeah, it is.
Right. Because to say a person that beautiful girl looked like she had the world at her feet, and then to know that she was struggling inside. What do you say when you, obviously, if you have to go Narcan someone, right? You meet the family. What do you typically say to someone who maybe it's their first time? What kind of advice do you give the family?
The video pretty much says it. Listen, you got to watch your kid. It's not going to be an easy path for them. Right. If they did it once, they're probably going to do it again. Just like the young lady wrote in a story. She was dead for 7 minutes. I think if I died, I think I'd be checked out and I wouldn't do something again. But with these opioids today, prescription pills that are turning to people going into heroin, they don't see death. They feel that it's never going to happen, and some of them accept it. Well, if I die, I die. And I'm like, for me as a person, I kind of scratch my head, and when I tell you, we saved you 3 times this week, how many more chances in life are you going to get? There's a poor guy that gets cancer and he dies tomorrow, so I always tell parents, watch your kids. You got to kind of be a detective in the house, know what your kids are doing. I don't mean to be overbearing and on top of them, but know who their friends are. Watch the way their habits are. You'll see a change when they start going down that path. Listen, you guys are kids. I know you don't want to hear this, but listen, I'm all for going through my kids' dressers, and when they're not home, what do they got in the house? Are they doing drugs? Mm-hmm. My biggest fear as a cop and a detective dealing with this is I don't want my kids or my family to be affected by it. Mm-hmm. It's always not me. It's not going to happen to me until it happens to you. So you kind of wonder, if I was there for my kid and I'd listened to him, maybe I would have saw the signs a little bit and I could have helped. But unfortunately, here goes the video games. Here goes the computer. Shut up, go in the other room, and call me if you need me. Yeah. It's the way parenting is today. Parents are so consumed with work and everything else right now. It's kind of tough. And I feel with COVID, that kind of brought the family values back together because we're all home. right? We get on each other's nerves, right? But we get to sit down and have dinner and have that family discussion. And not everyone's on a phone like this, texting at dinner, you know?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Go ahead, Michaela. I know you had something to say.
How did you get involved in the field? Like, did you always know that this is what you wanted to do?
Well, my mom's father was a Long Branch police officer years ago, but he died at a young age. At first, did I think I was going to be a cop? No. I thought I was going to open a pizzeria and make pizzas for a living. I don't know. I wanted to be a rock star, a rapper, a football player. And then something happened in my family, my father's life. And, you know, I'm not embarrassed to share it, but my father got incarcerated for drugs as a kid. And I saw going to a prison. I said, I'll never do that to my family. You know, here in that jail cell, being searched like I was a criminal as a kid, kind of changed me. So I kind of started to have to watch what I was doing. And then I always wanted to help people. You know, I thought I was going to come in and save the world. And my wife was like my biggest fan because I always talked about becoming a cop, but I was always scared of failure, right? It's not bad to fail. You know, you work harder and you move on from there. And she kind of helped me get to that place that I wanted to be. And then I took the test. And I've known a few other cops in the city and other departments. And then I still remember my grandfather. I don't remember him, but I remember the stories and everything. So when I came on 24 years ago, I thought I was going to wear a Superman cape and a big S on my shirt. And I was going to save everybody. This job is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And if I can save one person in my career or at a time, it makes a big difference. Just before I got onto this meeting, like I said, I taught Darren Great in the Long Branch School District for years. A student of mine reconnected with me about 3 years ago, and I taught him when he was probably about 9 years old. He's out of the military. He's got a great career. He reached out to me on LinkedIn, and he wanted to thank me for coming into class and talking about today's problems. You know, I kind of, when I get a lesson plan that I have to teach, I kind of always spin it to what's going on today. And he was very thankful of it. And now he, you know, that to me, that is a great feeling. If I put you in jail and you get out of jail and you write me a letter or an email at work telling me, thank you, you saved my life, that means the world to me. And does it happen a lot? Not every day, but when it does, it makes me it makes me feel that I'm doing the right thing at work.
Yep. Detective, I don't know if you can share this information with us, but you showed us what heroin looks like, you know, bricks of it, bags of it, mass quantities of it, just to kind of bring it into realities. That's what you're seeing on the street, right?
Yeah, what you guys just saw when I put it into that thing. So usually when you start seeing the single bags, that's usually when your habit's not bad. So you'll buy a bag or two a day, and then you work your way up. So now you'll buy a bundle, right? So you'll see a lot of people that can't afford a bundle, but I know you can afford 4 or 5 bags, but I know I can get at a good price. So I'll give you your 5 bags, and then I keep 5 bags. So the way you see it packaged is the way it's coming in. Everything it comes stamped. They're changing stamps now. They're going to non-stamp packages because we're tracking stamps.
Yeah.
Because now we do what's called strict liability. When someone dies years ago, if you died of a heroin overdose, that's what you died of. But now we're going after the person that sold it to you. If we can prove that nexus, and you know we use the stamp and other ways, I don't want to give you all the information.
Yep.
We can connect you and get the nexus with that. You can be charged with homicide for killing that person.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no, it is. Any other
Anyone else? Any questions, you guys?
It is easier, you know, when you can do meetings and have some food going on and soda and snacks and we can throw out candy and give
We'll
away.
definitely get Detective Simonelli to come back. The only thing I'll mention before we say goodbye, and I loved what you talked about, trusted adults. So for the students on the call, you know, we're really lucky at Tigger House because we have Carly, who is a great resource, but we also have all our ambassadors. So again, if you guys ever have things that you want to talk about and don't feel comfortable going to your school or your parents or anyone else, I mean, just know that, you know, Tigger House is a really confidential space. If you feel comfortable with any of our ambassadors, with Carly, with Detective Simonelli, you know, feel free, we're here for you. Tonight was really good because I think it was about, you know, learning about this, which we really don't do a lot of. So this was great.
Did anyone know what an opioid was or what heroin looked like or any of this stuff prior to this? Yeah, no?
I had seen some of it, not all of it. There was definitely a lot of new information.
And that's why you'll see now in your schools and police departments post a DEA drop box, right? Because a lot of the narcotics were in people's medicine cabinets, right? I didn't have to go to the street to get high. I just go to my grandmother's medicine cabinet and go through her pills and take them. So now they're disposing of all that stuff, so it's not kept in the house anymore. So there's a lot of good things out there that they're trying to combat it and fight it, but it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be an uphill battle and a struggle because in law enforcement, when we can take off a drug dealer, you think it will stop to sell the drugs in the community. There's always someone else that steps up. So like I said, it's a vicious cycle. You know, it's a game that you keep going playing back and forth, you know, but hopefully it ends soon.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Detective Simonelli. I do, you know, again, appreciate your time. I do hope that one day we can sit down and I can get to learn more about you over maybe some pizza. It sounds to be
coffee,
pizza. I eat a lot of pizza, so
yeah, me too.
I'm totally with you on that. You know, hopefully when the world gets back to, you know, normal, whatever that is, we can all sit down and be face to face for real, which is really awesome. But just remember for everyone on the call, the students, you know, Detective Simonelli gave you his contact information. We'll send that out. I know he's open to answering any questions you have one-on-one, sharing a little bit about his career. You know, you might be interested in becoming a police officer or interested in working in the office. There's many other positions and roles that, you know, keep the police station going. So thank you so much for your time. And, you know, with that, we'll wrap it up and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. I want to thank you guys very much.